Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, and welcome to Recovery Live. I'm Tom, recovered alcoholic, addict. It's a nice Friday here in New Jersey. 55 degrees this morning in New Jersey on January 13th, Friday the 13th. So I don't know if that matters to any of you that are superstitious. It does not to me, but it is Friday the 13th. I'm seeing them all smile in my back studio now when I talk about Friday the 13th. I want to tell you guys quick before we bring on our guests. We're going to have a great discussion today. We started the discussion behind the scenes, and that's why we're 3 minutes late. We couldn't, because Sarah had to stop us and tell us it's time to go live. So I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion today. I know we're going to, but I want to give you guys a real a positive report from the virtual retreat, which went on last weekend. And we had people from all over the world really on it. We had somebody from Berlin. We had people from Ireland, from all over the UK, all around the United States, and Hawaii. No, the Hawaiians had some real commitment because it was like 5 a.m. when they had to come to the events, and they were there, and all had a life-changing experience at the level based on where they were starting at. We had some people come, and this is very usual to our retreats, with just a very little bit of sobriety and a really long time, at least not having used a substance. And they still all learned something, and they were all very, very thankful that we showed them the key to being recovered and the key behind what the steps really meant and what they were able to do. I mean, some of them were like, we spent a lot of time doing these things and we didn't have to. So freedom was experienced by people from very little sobriety all the way to many, many years of sobriety. And I'm so thankful. We'll have a bunch of new people helping us. And Canada was with us, actually. Can't forget Canada, right? Our big country, 2 people from Canada. So it really good. We hadn't had Canada before. And so Canada, that might be our next place we're going to bring a retreat. So, and then in about a month, on the 15th of February, we're going to be out in California in Cupertino for what we're calling our commuter retreat. It's a retreat which it's going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but everybody goes home. So you'll come Friday, then you go home, then you come back Saturday all day, and then go home. That registration is open if you're in California and you want to come to that retreat. Cupertino is in the Bay Area. It's in the Valley. It's really closer to San Jose than it is to San Francisco. But they call that the Bay Area when you're out there. So it's all, and I mean, if any of you that go there, it's like around here, 3 miles could take you 4 hours or 20 minutes driving, depending upon what time of day you do it. And I'm as frustrated as I've ever been trying to cross that Oakland Bay Bridge at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in dead stop traffic. Anyway, so we have that retreat going. We're going to be in Nevada City then later, and then in Arizona after that. And then we'll start our fall retreats as things come together. So that's some of the happenings. There's a retreat in the UK at Kent, also in a couple of weeks. I believe it's sold out. So, but they are taking a waiting list. So if you're joining us from the UK and you're thinking about coming to that retreat, get your name on the waiting list. And then there's another one. If you go on their website, you'll see they have some sporadically scheduled throughout the rest of the year. So that's our great retreat update. I want to give a little update, last one before I bring everybody on, which is from the shelter in the Bronx. And we went out to the Bronx, as you guys know, in October, and we took a team in and we stayed at the rescue mission at the shelter, and we took the guys through the steps. And then, we left them kind of to their own devices. They had their books and they knew about working 10, 11, and 12. So I called Father Ignatius, who runs the shelter, last week before the virtual retreat. And I said, hey, we have a virtual retreat. We'll stream it to not stream it, but I'll give you the links to log in and you can play it for all the new guys there or whatever in the day room that they have a television in the. And he wrote back to me and he said, it won't be necessary, because all the guys that were there they're either still there and doing well, or they've left and gone on to get apartments and jobs and things. He said to me that nobody's left under negative circumstances since we were there. So that's a big deal, he says, because normally they have a couple a week coming in and out for whatever reason. So it's such a warms my heart and just my spirit, and makes me even more encouraged about what we do when I visit them then and see these results with these people. So we're going to be back there in the South Bronx. So today, guys, we're talking about religion versus spirituality. So this could get dicey, I think, with some people if the conversation went the wrong way. So we're going to navigate it. We're taking it on anyway. And we know that a lot of these questions that we're going to be discussing today, people have. What is religion versus spirituality? And what are denominations? And what does it mean? And, does God live in churches? Does he not? Can you connect with spirituality? All these things that many of us struggle with, especially newcomers coming in from recovery. And how do they navigate that? And how do we present ourselves to them and overcome any biases or prejudices from anything that they've learned? And I'll tell you, once we bring everybody on, a little story of mine. But anyway, today we're going to have, and you guys are all going to love it, Lisa's joining us. She's not the wizard behind the mask today. She's coming on. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Ready to join us in the religion spirituality conversation?
Yeah, this should be an interesting one for me.
Good. And then I want to bring on my buddy from down in St. Joseph, Missouri. Welcome back, the very great, famous Tim Doyle.
Here I am in all my glory.
His glory.
And it is cold here, by the way. I don't like hearing you say 55 degrees in New Jersey. It's like, whatever. That's like, we're like negative 55 or something. I don't know. It's not that bad, but it's cold. I'm ready for spring.
Yeah. I woke up this morning to go to the gym. Tim, I woke up this morning to go to the gym.
Yeah, you went to the gym.
Tim.
Okay. Surprise.
In case I
yeah,
went to the gym.
I'm catching that.
Tim. You're catching it. And guys, I have a little, I'm hoping one of these days Tim will join me at the gym when I come down.
What he's saying is I'm fat. That's what he's saying. That's the underlying thing there. He's taunting me with his svelte frame.
I would never intimate anything like that. I care about your health and well-being. Whatever.
And Alicia has me eating meat all the time. That's all
we are quite a gang, you guys, behind the scenes. Anybody that's fun, if you're traveling with us, it's interesting. Alicia brings her food with her.
Exactly.
And we scratch our heads, but whatever.
Meat cookies.
She does meat
cookies.
Yeah. And you got to be impressed by it, because she goes to great lengths to make sure she stays disciplined to what she does. Meatheads, Dale Barker says. Let's say hello to a few people with us. Angela Catone, 43 degrees. Angela must be in New York. Dale Barker's with us. Tim Lewick. Hi, Tim. And Doc Roth from Las Vegas. Great to see you with us, Doc. So we got New York and Florida and Las Vegas with us so far. I bet we'll get the UK joining us here one of these minutes, and some people from around the country, usually the Midwest, joins us. We'll see if Anna will join us today, and Sunny maybe will join us before we're done. So spirituality versus religion, guys. And you guys listening to us, if you guys have questions or comments, certainly put them in the comment section so we can put them up and answer them. And see, add to the conversation if you want to. I was doing a lot of research on it this morning, and I was talking to Tim about it when we were backstage. And, you can just go down a rabbit hole with this whole thing about, we're not discussing today which religion you should be part of, but more about what is religion versus spirituality. Mm-hmm. Because I found myself down this rabbit hole of which is the best religion, and which religion to be involved with, which was what I was researching. And we don't really want to talk about that today. But what is religion versus spirituality? And do they cross over? Are they mutually exclusive? And really, what are they? And like, what are denominations and what is that all about? So I'll start off just for me. I was raised in the Catholic Church, which is what I would call a denomination. It's a denomination with doctrines and dogma, and that's like books and things and rituals and things that you do. And I was taught that you go to church every week and you kneel and you stand and you kneel and you stand and you repeat whatever. And I never was much connected to it. I'm really laying it out here today. I had to go because my mother, we were in trouble if we all didn't go till we got to be teenagers, and my sister and I would go drive around for an hour and then go back home. And then she would ask us, "Did you see what happened at church today?" And we would, anyway. But, so I had been involved in that and with all that it had to do. And it was very much for me. This is just for me, guys, when you're listening. It was very much an institution that you were part of, and a bunch of practices. I was never taught that there was a connection or a relationship. And we were taught about God and there was a God and this and that. And they would tell you today, no, we told you that. We told you that you're in relationship and the Holy Spirit lives in you and all as a Christian. But they really were not teaching that. I mean, I wasn't getting it. And I don't know anybody else that was really getting that, at least in my age group, the kids growing up. So I kind of consider myself a beginner. When I came into recovery and I was told about a relationship with God, some of you might say, or somebody might say, well, you were raised in a church. You know all about God. You have a relationship with him. Well, I did not have any relationship with him, her, it, whatever we want to go down there. And it was and that's where I began to experience what I would call a spiritual connection with him, a spiritual versus a religious connection. I felt like I had a religious connection growing up, which was just go to the church, use the institution, do this. I don't know if this makes sense to you guys. And then when I came into recovery, I was told, no, let's see if this God is real and can he live in you? And he did. He touched me. And I began to have a different religion. Now, I will tell you this today, when I go back to the Catholic Church, it's a whole different thing because I'm coming at it with a different set of eyes. If I go there, I see it differently. So for me, I absolutely took on a whole different, my spirituality grew. I got spirituality, if that makes sense to you. And then today, if it's about attending a church, which would be a denomination, that is, it's different for me because I bring a spiritual self into it rather than a kind of an institutional self. So that's my little background on it, if that makes sense to you guys. Tim, did you have a similar experience like that at some point in your life, or, tell us a little bit about where you stand with that religion versus spirituality.
Let me just give a little bit of a disclaimer and say that, although I'm a pastor, I wasn't raised in the church. So I didn't have that background. I didn't go through the educational pathway of going to seminary and all the things. I'm a broadcaster by background, right? So pastoring for me is a relatively new thing that I fell into almost with objection and kicking and screaming because my church was going through crisis and said, we need help. And I said, well, we'll find you some, and they're like, no, we really think maybe you're supposed to help us. And long story short, my wife always told me she never wanted to be married to a pastor because she'd never met a happy pastor's wife. Think about that for a moment. It's funny, but it's sad. Yeah. And it kind of talks about the state of the church today. And I think, to me, Tom, that's where this discussion is probably going to eventually go is, churches are full of humans. Humans are fallible. Humans make mistakes. Anytime we feel like, we found the perfect church, I tell people, if you ever find that perfect church, don't join it because you'll ruin it. There's no such thing because we're human. But for me, growing up in a fatherless home, alcoholic and abusive home, my background, I was a loner. And I remember walking the hills just to get out of that atmosphere of abuse and just fear. And I think that's really where I had my first encounter, with the Lord, just walking and just having conversation, not really calling it prayer or that I was talking to Jesus.
Mhm.
I just was me and my thoughts because that was an escape. And it wasn't until I got to college that I really had what I would call an encounter with him. And I mean, it was life transforming. It didn't mean that everything from that moment, there was a switch that flipped and it was all perfect. But I began to realize that God is a person and that, so for me, again, I don't want to debate this with anybody. That's not my
Yeah.
desire at all.
Sure.
But to me, my relationship with God is very personal and it is a relationship. It isn't a religion. I remember when I first met my father, I told you the story. I was about 24 when I first met my dad. And he knew I was religious. And so he was also Catholic by background. And I said, I'm really not a religious person.
Mhm.
And he's like, what? It didn't compute for him. And I said, I'm really not religious. I said, I have a relationship with the God of the Bible. And, scripture says he's a father to the fatherless. That's my story. Right.
Mhm.
And so it became very personal for me. Now, as a pastor, it's really been challenging, especially since I met you, Tom. Thanks so very much, because you begin to see, these men and women that are struggling with addiction recovery, and they're told many different things, right, from different sources. And what I believe after maybe a year and a half now of really living in this world, with Came to Believe, and so thankful for this resource that's helped us try to reach out and bring some stability to men and women who are truly struggling. I believe that an encounter is the answer, not religion. Spirituality can mean a lot of different things to many different people. For me personally, it was an encounter that changed my life. And that's really what I want people to have. I mean, all these other resources and tools are wonderful, but really what they need, if you know the Bible story of Paul, the apostle, he had an encounter. I mean, literally knocked him off his ass. Biblical term, right? He was on a donkey. Okay, he got knocked out, and a radical life change. To me, that's the only answer for any life besetting addiction or any struggle that we're having is an encounter. And it's not, again, instant quick fix, one size fits all. It's a process. It's a journey. Like any relationship, you get to know each other. You spend time together. You grow. And I'm 62 now, right? So I've had a few years to grow, but all that time wasn't spent as a pastor. It was spent as a follower, And really my heart today for anyone would be, let's get you connected with the guy who can give you a life transforming experience and build this beautiful relationship, who is promised will never leave you or forsake you. So that's my pitch. And I'm saying that I want to do the disclaimer, the asterisk. I'm not saying everyone else is wrong and I'm right. I'm just telling you my story, basically.
And the same thing, that's a mic drop, Tim, I'm telling you.
So we're done. Recovery Live's over.
In an experience. But I mean, that is so what I experienced. I had an encounter and that changed everything for me. But my encounter didn't have to do with it, much like yours. It sounded, you had a conversation and he found you where you were on the mountain, walking, hiking. Right. And you didn't have to do anything to get his approval. And I think that's what biases and prejudices a lot of people today against even being open to the idea of, let's say, a power greater than themselves, if we're going to go there, is because of what they've seen and heard in the world. Yeah. And I know that it biased me and prejudiced me until I was able to have an encounter. And now I have a relationship. I'm very much like you. And this is, and so does Lisa, that this is what we know, that people come in broken. They need to be allowed They need to be led to an encounter, not a
Right.
process that they have to do stuff. And when they do, we know they join other churches and places and denominations. They actually do better once they've had an encounter, when they go and are involved in some sort of a place where people gather to worship and praise and hear the word.
Let's talk about the word encounter. So I'm coming from
Okay.
a different perspective. I don't have a religious or, quite frankly, even much of a spiritual background. So when coming from that area, hearing the word encounter kind of makes people feel a little bit on the outside if you haven't had one. So I haven't had an encounter where I felt him come through me and I've become changed by it. So it's like, do I really have a God then? Has he not chosen me since he hasn't come through me and not? So it creates kind of this sect, these silos of you've been touched, you haven't. And as an outsider, it makes you feel like an outsider still. Yeah. So as much as I'm on that journey and I want to know more and I'm always questioning and I'm always open, there's part of me that's like, well, I'm still on the outside. Like, oh. So it's interesting.
I think anytime if religion ever makes you feel that way, then you found a good religion, but you haven't found a relationship with a God who's pursuing you. I mean, that's what the Bible says. It was while we were his enemies that God intervened in humanity. And it makes me sad, Lisa, to think that anything that I would have said would make anyone feel like an outsider or that I'm somehow a special class. Not at all. Not at all. Just almost the opposite. I come from a background of feeling probably less worthy than anybody else. You know what I mean? It's like,
and knowing you, I know that that's not the intent.
But I can tell the heart, though, what you're saying. And I'm glad you said that, because that helps people like me say, okay, we really got to watch our language. We got to watch our posture and how we come across, because it's not like, I'm in the club, you're not. Not at all. And it's more, you feel the Father's heart for people. And it's like, this is the desire of his heart. This is what he sent Jesus for. He sacrificed the greatest thing ever so that he could get to know people and build that relationship. So it isn't of, hey, join the club and be among the cool kids. It's more, man, I know what that's like to be alone and feel like the outsider.
Yeah.
And relating to that. And then, Tom, you mentioned the word process. I realized that you can use that word negatively, but what I've learned is it is a process. It's a journey, and one of the things we've seen, especially with our men and women in recovery, is that they relapse and they stumble and they fall. And just like my relationship with my Heavenly Father, we don't give up on people because they stumble or because they don't get it or because they don't think they need it. I mean, my desire, my heart is, man, I want you to have this, but it's got to be their decision. He's not going to force us, into something that we're just not really wanting.
I feel like a lot of times people who are on that journey are waiting for that lightning bolt, the hammer to hit them over the head. Exactly. Here I am. And if we don't have that moment, it's, it makes it that you have to question it more and more.
Right.
So I always think about that. And I think about the people that are new to spirituality and new to finding a higher power. As someone who is and has struggled with it, like I can relate to that, and again, knowing the two of you, like, I know that that's not necessarily what needs to happen, but just from a broader perspective, like,
if you read the scriptures, you'll see that Jesus was a lot harder on religious people. I mean, like, offensively hard. He was a lot more tolerant with the people who were on the journey, still in the discovery process. And, I love it. That's the kind of heart I want to have toward people who even see it totally different than me. There are people that will watch this that I'm sure, won't agree with what I'm saying. And that's okay. I understand. All we can do is share our story, right? But along the way, we love people wherever they're at.
Right.
And God's a pretty creative God. He can get a hold of people wherever he wants to.
And that's the statement, Tim, is that sometimes we want to do his job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I've even stepped back to say, who are we to say how he's supposed to touch somebody and how he's going to speak to them and what he's going to tell them to do? And as soon as we do that, And as soon as a million people like Lisa, because not as much, but we have to be careful. This is what we don't want them to come into our retreats and feel like they're on the outside
Right.
of a
Yep.
we think our talk is very neutral, right, Tim? I think sometimes, and it's very inclusive. And I know a bunch of my leaders think so, and then they'll throw something out, and I go, "You just threw in the bath that people coming in," and it's not so much. And what we've done then is bias them even further.
Right.
I knew it. They were going to make me do this. I knew it. What a trick it is for us to be able to clear this all away as best we can and then not be judgmental, right? Tim, I mean, to say, who are we to say how it's going to touch you? Does it really matter to us? I mean, we present the message. In our case, we present what the founders did in the program and what it was, because that's our truth. And that's what worked, right? We're never going to say that something else worked in our context because it didn't. The 12 steps are a certain thing, but having people be able to be open and break down denominational religious traditions and that barrier is, I think, a bigger barrier than we think. So I'll ask you, Tim, and then Lisa too, because I know, Lisa, been to a church. You were raised in a church, right?
Kind of. I mean, we were baptized. We went to church here and there, but it was not something that we did regularly. My mom worked at a church when I was in high school, but we still didn't go. So I actually have very little experience with religion other than some negative stuff where, as almost you said, people were trying to do the work of Jesus themselves and tell me that I was going to hell because I wasn't doing X, Y, and Z.
Oh, gosh.
Right. So that's my negative experience. And so it's interesting. Knowing Tom for, I don't know, too long now, he started over here. He started way kind of inside the door. And I was like, way across the street, not even near it. And over the 10 years, we've come closer and closer together. Yeah. And it's just interesting to kind of watch how the two of us have grown in different directions, yet closer together.
So what's really interesting about you saying that, Lisa, I was thinking about this today.
Sorry.
I read the comment too, Lisa. I did.
What was the comment?
Dale.
Oh, of course, only Dale.
Yeah.
That if I was I don't know which side it is, a strong. And there are people in this world that are, it's my way or the highway.
Oh yeah.
Right.
We'll get along
we might
very well.
We might not hire you, right? You wouldn't work for this organization. Yeah. And what would be the benefit of that? And then again, there are those that would say that those of us that are, are being, not faithful to our faith by doing, but you're like one of the best friends I have. You have great wisdom. We get along. There'd be no reason why we wouldn't have a friend working relationship, and it has gotten nothing but closer. So I look back and say, had I said I can't ever really get close to her because of this, we wouldn't be here today.
Right.
So it's an example of, and it's not my job to make God touch you when he touches you. It doesn't, and that frees me. It's not my problem. I mean, it's not I shouldn't say problem, but not my, please. So Tim, when your church would be, let's talk about this a little bit. It would be considered non-denominational. Yes.
Yeah. If you had to put a label, I mean, I don't like that term because it sounds like I'm against denominations, but yeah, we're unaffiliated with any particular denomination. Yeah. So
to you, just for people listening that want to talk about what's a denomination, what's non-denominational, because I say non-denomination is a denomination. I mean, it has a set.
Right.
Some would think that because they look at that church and say, well, it is still it's a building and I have to go in there and I have to do this and I have to spend right? And so that's a domination. It comes with some kind of rules, right?
I don't know what those rules are, if there are any,
Right.
but
Well, this is good for you to say, because like
yeah.
I've been to your church, and if you go to Tim's church, I know it's not just they say it, they mean it. Anybody's welcome, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, and that can be, sometimes people even use that as a weapon, because if they say, well, if everybody's welcome, then I'm going to come in and do what I want to do. And if you are if you say I can't do that, then you're against me. I'm like, no, that I'm not against you at all. It's just, here's what we've agreed upon as a group, as a congregation, as a family. I'd rather use the word family. As a family, you know, every family, every healthy family has rules, right? I mean, you can't jump on the beds, or it's like, it's like boundaries are healthy.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, there's some boundaries, but that doesn't mean that if you don't measure up to our standard. I mean, Tom, we are in a place in our city that's very much an inner city location. We'll have homeless wander in at any given moment. Some of them pushing shopping carts with their stuff, backpacks. Sometimes they come in and they're exhausted. They sleep on the chairs while I'm preaching, which is not an uncommon practice for most people, actually. And, and they'll come in and get a cup of coffee. The beautiful thing is, I'll tell you a quick story. We're really close to the river where our church is, and a lot of homeless people live there. So they'll come in and I'll meet them. Like, we have this guest reception at the end of our celebration, and I'll meet the new people, right? Well, I'm meeting homeless people in that opportunity. There was one elderly guy, I call him elderly. He's my age. My gosh, I'm not elderly. But he looked about 30 years older than me. And his name was Rico, and living on the river, and obviously, doesn't have a way to take a bath, and one set of clothes and all of it. And it was -30 wind chill, -30. And these guys are sleeping on the river. I'm going to cry if I talk about it. Because I have a heart for people like Rico. And so I met him, gave him some food, some clothes, and he was back the next day. This is my church. I'm coming back. I'm like, that's good. Sometimes people say that and you never see him again. Next Sunday, he was back. And I walked up to him and said, Rico, it's so good to see you. And I'm telling you, Tom, the light in his eyes, he got high beam headlights. And he didn't say it, but I could read his mind. You know my name. And I wonder how long it had been since somebody with kindness, and just a sense of he's a person, bothered to say his name and to treat him with value. And that's my family. So I could give a rat's rear end what you wear to church, or, it's like, there are no rules. There's certain behavioral expectations. You're going to be nice. You're not going to be ugly to people, and you're not going to cause a scene. You know what I mean? But as far as what you come in with and your perspective, your background, we're all on the journey together. So I know I'm sounding very nebulous and super broad. I'm not Oprah. It's not like, all roads lead to the. No, I don't believe that. I can't. If I believe what the founders believed, But I also know that I'm called, like the Good Samaritan, to be kind to the one that's on the roadside and has fallen into hard times, and that we can be in process. Can we just be in process together and allow one another to grow at our pace? And then I believe, Lisa, ultimately, there will be an encounter moment. And it may not be one lightning bolt, but it might be a gradual, where one day you're like, whoa, how did I get here? And it was just one step at a time.
I can tell you now, I'm 3 retreats in, I think, and I'm changed. I'm definitely different than I was 2 years ago. Like,
Wow.
So it's very gradual, but there's things that I do and things that I say and things that I think that would never have entered my brain 2 years ago. So I've become much more open and willing to say, oh, I see that.
And people who truly love you won't say, well, one day Lisa will be like us and she'll get it figured out. That's an agenda. And people can tell a disingenuous, relationship from a mile away. And so, yeah, no, I think it's beautiful. And that's the way I think it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I always kind of say, and I think Tom's sick of hearing me say it, but the thing that I found when it came to believe is the community, because
Exactly.
the people that I've come to know over the last 2 years embody those Christian principles of
Right.
no judgment, loving, accepting
Yeah.
where you are. And,
Right.
again, as a non-religious person coming in, I was worried, like, oh boy, I don't go to church every day. What are these people going to think of me? And it hasn't been an issue. It
Yeah.
hasn't been an issue. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, it's helped me connect with some people in ways that I probably wouldn't have if I had already come in with a mindset. So it's been amazing.
That's awesome. And Tom, you can address this, I think, better than anyone, but one of the things that we have learned in dealing with men and women in recovery is they are told certain things by certain groups. And we tried to bring Came to Believe to the table because we felt like it would facilitate an encounter experience. And it really wasn't received very well, and I have to be okay with that and let people be where they're at. But at the same time, I really have this burning desire to bring something that will help them learn that it's not just another meeting to go to, but a family, a relationship, and that we need more than another meeting. And that message sometimes is controversial, and it does set up sides, and I don't mean that at all. I've never talked disparagingly about anything else. I just know this is necessary if you really want to have long-term transformation and not have to go to a meeting to keep things rolling. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, we had hoped so too. And I say to you, Tim, we said it the other day, it's not no, it's just not yet.
Yeah, it's a process.
And we're gonna pivot down there, and we're gonna reach out to some people in a different way.
Yeah.
And we're gonna just take a different path. We don't get stopped. The message is needed, and we just want it available to people.
Right.
And I've grown over the years now that, and Lisa's right, just 6 or 7 years or 20 years. How long have we known each other? 25. Too long? Did you say?
Too long.
I heard that. I did hear that. Imagine what Dale Barker thinks. Known him like really long. And then Caceres in the background going, oh no, I'm just starting on this. Now I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about right there before?
Just about how sometimes when we present the Came to Believe model or tell people that there's more than a meeting.
I have gotten to where I'm much more comfortable with. Let me go back. There would have been a time not that long ago where I would have been really looking for this encounter that everyone have, and really feeling like I was a failure if we didn't create an encounter for everybody. And I know, Tim, you definitely must feel that sometimes at a church. It's hard not to think, why aren't they feeling what I feel? Right? I would be dishonest not to say, I don't understand.
Right.
I mean, it worked for me. But I've gotten, and I think it's been to my benefit in being able to create relationships across the board with all sorts of different people. They don't think they pick it up from me, that they get a judgment on them, or that I'm expecting them to believe the way I do immediately right off the bat, or that I'm responsible for it.
Right.
And that's growth for me, because I'm not responsible for the results. Yeah. I'm only responsible to give the message and share what I can. And then God's way bigger than I am, and his plan and mine. You know what he says, how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plan.
Right.
My plan can't matter, but that came with time with me. I mean, certainly 10 or 15 years ago, I'd have been much different. I was just immature, and and I think a lot of addicts and people come in, and just all people that aren't connected to any kind of a spirituality are biased, Tim and Lisa, and prejudiced by all of this stuff that they see and they hear, and the judgment and the intolerance that there is in the world. And now we're getting on a soapbox. There's, and it's strife, and it's not, I mean, what good would it have been if I was intolerant of Lisa or others that I meet? I meet people all day long that do different things, or Father Ignatius, who's so far inside the door wearing his robe.
Right.
You know, if I wanted to be like, oh, why are you doing that? You know, this and that. I mean, I don't think about that at all. He's like, but because I'm that way, I saw past all of that into his heart.
Right.
And this guy is amazing.
Yep.
So I count myself blessed. I say that I've gotten to this place that I can see through kind of what to the heart and go, all right.
You know, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, we always kind of use this door analogy from that poem. And, you know, I think hearing all this, there's a place at every spectrum within that door. Like there's people inside that door that need the person in there guiding them even further.
Right.
You know, so there is a place for everybody within this continuum of spirituality and beliefs. And, you know, it just, you are where you are and you're there for the people that are needing you there. So, and that again is just that tolerance and acceptance and understanding that everybody has a purpose and accept it for what it is.
Yeah, that's good. Good way to put it. And you mentioned the word tolerance, Lisa. I think about that a lot because, you know, we live in a culture where, you know, it's the, you know, I'll shut you down if I don't agree with you. And if you don't agree with me, then you're against me. It's like, no, that's not it at all. But I can see how religion sometimes creates that impression that if you don't believe exactly what I do and don't do exactly what I say, then I'm going to shut you off and come see me when you decide to get serious. And, you know, that's not it at all. And I think that's one of the things that we're learning as a community is if there's a secret sauce to what we do, it is that we welcome people no matter where they're at, what place they're at. Like you said, Lisa, you know, what stage of door entry they're at, and maybe they'll never enter the door. And I treat them no differently because of that. You know, so yeah, that's a really good word.
Yeah.
And if you guys love and tolerance just is our code, that's something we say. And all you do is meet Dale Barker and you'll learn tolerance. Go ahead, Lisa. Sorry.
Oh my goodness. That's a scary thought, actually.
Yeah. Right. You know Dale too. So does Lisa. We all know Dale. Yeah.
Yeah.
He says though I'm a pretty cool guy for a normie, so that's okay. You know?
Yeah.
I feel totally excluded by that statement, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because you guys are normies.
Oh yeah.
Although there's nothing normal about either of you. I've known, you know. But we embrace everybody, and there's a bunch of people, Tim and Lisa, in our world, in the recovery world, who would not be okay with those who stay very much in their own little culty world and don't connect with normies and people that are food addicts and all the different types of things. So, I mean, a lot of good stuff.
It's interesting that you use the word cult, because we had somebody comment on one of our Facebook posts like AA is a cult.
Wow.
And I sat there and I'm like, I looked up the definition of a cult because that's typically what I do. And like, it was just interesting. And I didn't know how to like attack it because clearly it's not. But it's that idea of at some point they must have been harmed and excluded and hurt by something that happened. Yep. And I think that there are probably extremist groups within AA that probably do feel a little bit cultish. But this has been the farthest thing in my experience with Came to Believe is it's you choose your path. You follow the path as you feel comfortable. We're not jamming it down your throat saying you must believe and practice in our way. We're the exact opposite of it. So it was interesting. I didn't respond because I didn't know how to respond, but it's out there.
I was just talking to a guy yesterday that was a drug and alcohol addict and spent a year at the LA Dream Center in Los Angeles. And that was his get clean process. And he's doing fantastic today. And I was just asking him, I said, man, how can I help these men and women who really just don't seem to want what we're offering, and yet we love them and they love us. We count them as family, but it's heartbreaking. And he said something very simple, but very profound. He said, They have to want it. And I said, okay, I get it. I don't like it.
Right.
But that's got to be, like you said, Lisa, this has got to be something that is their decision. I can't
Right.
make the decision for them,
Mm-hmm.
but I can create an environment, an atmosphere where that decision is possible, and they want it because they see life can be different than how I'm currently living.
Absolutely. Because Sarah's been on, and we've talked about harm reduction and
Right.
just treating people as people
Right.
first.
Exactly.
Not an addict, not a homeless person, not a schizophrenic, but a person. And
Right.
everyone is welcome. And I think that's the key, is just when they're ready, they know they're welcome.
Yes, exactly. And even when they're not ready, they're welcome.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, person first. I love that, and we talk about that. That
Yeah.
you're a person struggling with something. You're not that label. I mean, and we start right there, because that label is what puts people behind the
Mm.
people. They can't come out of it, especially as an alcoholic addict myself. I needed to shake that level. It would let me believe. You mean I can be like you?
Yeah.
I can be in this place and be able to be recovered when.
You see what Doc said there, Tom?
What Doc say?
I love his quote. Compassion without compromise will change lives as he continually changes ours. That's really good.
There you go, Doc.
There's a mic drop.
Yeah.
It's a mic drop. Perfect. Well, guys, this has been, I think we could talk all day. I think we got to get Casera on the next one.
Absolutely.
And bring her in to the discussion. I really do think we need to do this again. I think this is more important of a discussion than maybe even we realize. I think that our demographic and people listening to us, these are the talks that go on in their kitchens, in their living rooms, and in their heads when they're walking. Yeah. And a lot of it is just not understanding or feeling comfortable. A lot of me being afraid of something has not. I think Alicia said it at retreat. You're not afraid of what you don't know. You're afraid of what you know, and you don't know it correctly. Or so you're taught something, but you're taught something that puts a bias on you, and so then you label it over everything. I'd rather not know about it than I don't have a bias. But creating that.
Tom, can I just say too,
sure,
that as a church leader, trust me, I've heard the horror stories that can make your skin crawl. Just even recently, a young man in our church who had been abused in a previous church at age 5 and was blamed for the abuse. The 5-year-old. I just want to explode, when I hear stories like that. So I just want to say to those who've been hurt by the church or organized religion, whatever you want to call it, I'm sorry. I sincerely apologize as a leader that happened to you. It should never have happened. It was wrong. And I don't ever want to see that happen ever again. But I also know we live in a world that isn't perfect with imperfect people. So don't let stuff from the past or the fear of what if something happens. We can't lock ourselves in a closet and think we're going to escape life, because then we miss out on the joy too. So find a group of people that you can run with, that you can build a relationship with and get back on the journey, and don't give up, because he's not giving up on you.
Wow, that's a mic drop. I'm telling you. It needed to be said. Yeah, lots of mic drops today. We could have ended this anyway. This time we really do have to end it. I want to thank you, Tim, for coming on. And I know you'll be on again. You'll be a semi-regular person on the show as often as you want. You can come on. And Lisa for coming on. We are off on our weekend, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. And we'll definitely bring Casera on next time, and keep this going. So thanks again, everybody. And we'll see you guys all next week at 9:00 Pacific, 12:00 Eastern, 10:00 Central for Tim. 11. I always get the times wrong. And 5:00 in the UK for another edition of Recovery Lives. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you, guys.